Right, here we are back with this Royal Enfield Constellation, which has had an oil leak, and here's where I'm at so far and what I've done. Hopefully I'll be able to point out and explain what I've been up to. Now obviously we had the oil leak from the crankcase joint in this sort of area here, and what I've been able to do, we've already seen that I was able to tighten the crankcase bridge or junction screws a little, and that seemed to reduce the leakage when I tested it under pressure from my oil can. But what I've done since then is I fitted Allen bolts. Hopefully we can see them there. But in order for them to work, I had to make the heads of them shallower, so I spun them in the lathe and held a grinder against them with a linisher disc fitted. And I also, what I did is I ground the heads of the Allen bolts slightly domed, so I could leave the central area where the Allen key fits into them slightly raised compared to the edge, because obviously you've got a radius going around here, so it was the sort of edge nearest this point here which had to be ground back the most. So I've managed to keep as much of the socket part of the Allen bolts intact, if you like. At the moment I've got them slackened off because, as I found with the slot head screws, obviously when I tightened them there was a little bit of take up and it did seem to have an impact on reducing the leakage. Well, I thought the reverse of that might work for me if I slacken these, and what I did is I cleaned out the gap. There's a slight gap between the two cylinders there that goes so far down, so I cleaned that out with a hacksaw blade and clutch and brake cleaning fluid and compressed air. Got it absolutely spotless, so there was no trace of any oil there. And then what I did with these screws slackened off is I put in some well seal, which is in a sort of pretty much liquid state itself, and I thought by slackening these off there'd be more chance of the well seal seeping into where it might be needed. And I also chased it in with a heat gun, which I'm not running this time because I had a few complaints. My last video I had the heat gun actually running and apparently it was messing up the sound. So anyway, heat gun served two purposes: warmed up the cases, well, and actually thinned down the well seal a little bit, but also the sort of blast from it would have helped hopefully force it into wherever it might find its own way and settle there. Another thing that I did, which is probably going to be thought of as very controversial, and I might get all sorts of flack for it, but it's worked for me numerous times in the past, so I thought I'd give it a go again, is where the join is there between the two crankcases where they meet up. Now obviously I had an oil leak there as well. So just very carefully, I didn't batter it, okay, I used the ball hammer and just tapped the face of the joint where the two cases meet each other, because alloy is quite malleable and it might just sort of help compress it and make the two faces fit a little tighter together where there is in fact no bolt of any kind holding them together there. So I've done that as well, and then my last job will be when this lot's settled down a bit, give it time to settle and work in, I'll put the Allen key in, tighten the Allen screws that hold the junction or bridge of the crankcase together, get them nice and tight. They'll go tighter than they did when they were slot head, although there are limits because obviously we are just screwing into threaded holes in aluminium after all. And I'm pretty sure, well, I know that that'll be the best that anyone could have done with it without stripping the engine, but I'm pretty confident that it'll solve the problem as well. So I'm going to cross my fingers and go and have some lunch, and then probably give it a while to settle and set, and then pressure test it again after I've tightened those two screws up, and hopefully it should be good news.